Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Vlad Valme. He is the Director of Sales at Thompson Duke Industrial. Thank you very much for joining me today, Vlad.
Thanks for having me, David.
Well, before we get started, I always like to ask people to please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Let's get into it, Vlad. I always like to know a little bit about everybody's beginning as to what brought them into the cannabis industry. What was it specifically that brought you here today?
It's been a long journey. I've been a long-time cannabis user. I probably started in my late teens. And ever since partaking in the plant, I've just been fascinated by how diverse the plant is and how unique it is in the cultivars. It just had me growing up in the East Coast. I did not have the diversity that I knew that the plant had. So certain situations caused me to move to California and pretty much, quit my secure job in the IT field and say, hey, I just want to start from scratch and I just want to focus my life in cannabis. That was early, around mid 2000s. And I came to California and pretty much worked my way up from being a bud tender to managing dispensaries, to putting out a brand, and then to working with various companies in the space until I like to say I found my forever home with Thompson Duke Industrial.
Okay. What were you doing in the IT industry?
So it pretty much, I was a network admin, and setting up servers and maintaining servers, which a lot of that is obsolete with the cloud. So maybe it's a good thing that I wasn't in the space anymore, because a lot of the functions that I was doing as IT there's like an app for that. Like I like to say, how that pretty much does everything that I was doing. So I think it was a good pivot for me.
When you started as a bud tender, were you happy with that role, or was it always you wanted to sort of work your way up through the industry?
Well, you know what? That's an interesting question. I think being the bud tender was and is my happiest position in the cannabis space. But I knew that I could easily work up. I just needed the opportunity, and it took a long time. The hardest part in this was getting to become a bud tender, because at that time I didn't know, and I moved to California and I didn't know anybody. So I kind of create a network. But the experience of being a bud tender, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, because it just reaffirmed everything that I believed in the plant. And when I was a bud tender, it was still in the days when, our shops were getting raided, right? I got arrested a couple of times in these shops being raided. So I went through the whole experience. But on the other end of that, I was seeing people coming in on a daily basis, and they were actually bettering their lives with the use of cannabis, whether it was from arthritis or joint pains. Just the stories and the testimonials that you can't get unless you're a bud tender and you're interacting with the people. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
When you're working and your place of business gets raided, how do you go back to work the next day?
It's an interesting thing. You have to believe that you're doing the right thing and you're not doing any malice. So if you believe you're doing the right thing, it's easy to just wake up and do it again the next day. It was an interesting time, because it was we were getting raided so often that it was like, hey, see you next Tuesday. We're going to come raid you again. It was that kind of relationship. And you're like, well, we'll be here. We're not. It was the definition of Wild Wild West. Obviously, that's not like that anymore. And kudos to the guys that are bud tending now. It's such a better space to do so, because you just don't have that over your head. But because I was new to it, and I left New York and I came here for the adventure, everything to me was an adventure. So good, bad, or indifferent, it was worth it.
How did you find yourself at Thompson Duke?
Bud tending, then again, like I was saying, I was managing shops. And as I was managing shops, I was looking for products that would help the senior clientels that we had. And I knew that vaping was the fastest form of a senior being able to get the medicine to get the relief that they're looking for. And there wasn't that many products available. So as I was working at the shops, I was on the hunt for vaporizers that I can supply the shop with to sell to our clients. That got me down the rabbit hole of finding the right vape cartridge, finding the right hardware, and it kind of spiraled into understanding and building relationships with different hardware manufacturers. And then into going into, okay, we've got this hardware, but how do we fill it? And how do we fill it the right way and make sure that everything is exactly what we say it is in it?
Once you get to Thompson Duke, what was your first role there?
Sales. So I started out in Thompson Duke as sales. I was working at another company and we were selling the Thompson Duke product line down here in Los Angeles. And that went well. We had some great success with that. And then just kind of kept the relationship with Thompson Duke because as I was getting more into the, let's say, the legal industry, I was working for bigger and bigger companies. And I'm a guy that likes smaller companies. I like, less than 20 people getting things done. You can move a lot easier. So I was always attracted to the model that Thompson Duke had because they had a small group with excellent equipment. So when I was selling their equipment, it was easy to sell because there was no issues with it. And if we had to make any changes, the company was small enough to listen to the customers and make changes as needed.
Okay. What was it like transitioning from being on, the retail side of the business, consumer side of the business, over to the equipment side of the business?
It was interesting. Again, like that's what kind of made me realize, like, hey, I do like the equipment space, but I do want to be in a smaller format. I had some background in dealing with equipment because I used to own a print shop, so I was bringing in equipment and dealing with equipment all the time. So it kind of was second nature, but it was very important for me to find a company that I could stand behind, because it wasn't just about selling equipment. It was just about, hey, who's doing it right and who actually cares about what they're doing, because that's important to me.
What type of equipment does Thompson Duke manufacture?
So we manufacture cannabis oil vaporizer device filling and capping equipment. Yeah. So our headquarters are in Portland, Oregon, and that's where our team designs, manufactures, and distributes like a line of CETLUS and certified GMP-ready machines designed specifically for filling and capping cannabis oil and vaporizer devices.
Are these devices primarily for small operations in the cannabis industry, or are they even in some of the larger MSOs?
Yeah, I think primarily we are in most of all the larger MSOs, but we do also have our semi-automatic machine that caters to kind of the budding industry. So when there's newer markets, we know, hey, we'll start off with our semi-automatic machine because they're proving the concept that it's going to work. And as the company matures, then we have another line of machines, which is our IZR machine, or our fully automated machine, that can kind of take you from doing, anywhere from 2,500 a day to 10,000 a day.
Man, have you been in some of those facilities that are doing 10,000 a day?
Oh yeah, plus I've been in facilities that are doing 50 to 100K a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a really amazing experience, the seat that we have working at Thompson Duke, because we are able to go into facilities, kind of understand their operations and see their day-to-day activities. Very impressive, to say the least. And not everyone is doing it the same, which is something that I love too, because there's so many different ways to get up the mountain. So everybody has their own way of doing it. And we get to kind of be exposed to that and see what these people are doing.
What type of ramp up are people looking at when they bring in Thompson Duke equipment? Is it a lot of training? How is it to operate? Some of it, what is the operational aspect like?
Yeah, so I one of the aspects I loved with selling the Thompson Duke machines is the ease of use. Our semi-automatic machine, we literally can sell the machine and not even give you any training. You can open up the box, you'll have it set up and running in 5 minutes. And
wow.
that has to do with the simplicity of the design. We got to give it up to our engineers for that, because it was designed in America for an American audience, right? So it's designed to make it as simple as possible, but yet super effective and accurate. So the training on these machines are little to none. And once you get going, you got it. It's not something you have to like, oh, we have to go over. We try to take away all the complications. You see all the components. There's nothing hidden behind a box. You see everything in front of you. And once you see how the oil moves through the machine, you not only understand how to use the machine better, but you understand your oil better, which is what I love.
What is the landscape like for vaping and capping, or vape filling and capping equipment? You know, what is it, a pretty competitive landscape? And how does Thompson Duke fit in? Are you more of the higher end option that comes with a little bit less trouble along the wayside? Where do you guys stand out amongst your competitors?
Yeah, for us, I feel like we're more of a higher end option, because we've kind of weathered a lot of storms, because we've seen vape companies come and go, and we understand that this market, it's not like other industries, right? So again, I told you I have a little bit of experience in the printing industries. A lot of different printers you can purchase. A lot of them have longevity, and that market is kind of solid. What we notice a lot in this industry is we'll have a lot of other companies coming in with machineries, and they're looking at it not the way that we look at it. So we look at it as, how do we accurately and efficiently deliver oil into your devices? And I noticed that other companies are like, hey, how do we put something together and sell it for the most amount of money? Not really support it, not really think about growth or long-term ideas, but just like, hey, it's a cash grab, and let's do that. But the cannabis industry is so young, and I think at Thompson Duke, we look at it like, hey, we're helping to grow this industry, and an industry that you're helping to grow. We don't want our machines to be in a facility and not being used. So for us, it's like, the quality, that's why our name is Industrial, Thompson Duke Industrial. The quality is there. You have an industrial built machine, and that's going to be a complete workhorse. So, we look at ourselves at a different tier than most of the other options out there.
Would you say that some of those fly-by-night cash grab type companies or competitors have mostly gone by the wayside now as the market has matured?
It's some have. But it's one of those things where some have gone away and then new ones pop up, but then they have their own life cycle, which it might last a year or two, and then the same thing happens. I think that's all good. I don't look at it as direct competition. I look at it as building the story, right? Because even though it's a different way of doing things, we're all trying to build this industry in a sense. It's just that we're here for the long term.
You'd mentioned the market as a whole. I'd like to take a look at the vape market and kind of get your perspective on it. You mentioned a little bit about how you saw the vape market initially catering towards seniors. What was the history of the vape market? Where does it stand now, and what are your expectations for it going forward?
Yeah, I think, and this is my view from living in California and kind of seeing it play out here. When vapes first started becoming popular in California, there were 3 brands, I believe, that kind of piloted the vape cartridge phase in the cannabis industry altogether. And it was like Open Vape, Eureka, and a company called Pure Vape. All 3 of these companies introduced vape cartridges to the market. And it wasn't, they weren't specifically targeting seniors, but seniors were buying it because they had more disposable income. So vape cartridges were like $60 to $80 when they first came out. So that wasn't something that someone who would go to the market would spend, who was younger people would just buy maybe $30 in an eighth or something of some sort of flower product, or maybe an edible. I see the landscape changing because vaping has just grown dramatically. I think it's probably, if maybe the second or third biggest in the space. So we're just seeing it grow more and more. And that's really impressive because we went through obviously COVID, and we went through a vape crisis, right? And even after all of that, it's still holding as a huge section of the industry. So I see it expanding, and as we're tracking it, not only in the US, we're tracking it in Canada and in Europe, and we just see it's the same trend. It starts off slightly, but it picks up so tremendously. And it's a testimony from our customers who are buying our semi-automatic machine, let's say in a newer market. And then before the end of the year, they're like, hey, we need an automatic machine because we went from, 5 to 10,000 carts a month to now we have orders of 100,000 a month. It just grows. So every market, we kind of expect that that's the kind of growth that we will see.
Were you at Thompson Duke during the vape crisis?
Yes.
What was that like?
That was interesting because you just don't know what's going to happen. So you're just like, you understand, because I was in California, and you know that there are some questionable activities in the products that people are filling in vapes, and you don't know what's going to happen. And it was kind of a great thing that did happen, because it really showed how mature the industry is, because the industry self-regulated itself. And they stepped up to bat, and they were like, hey, we do not want to be associated with any of these like cutting agents that are being used and harming people. So we're going to make sure that we're going to stop that from happening before any other, jurisdiction has to come in and tell us what to do. And so it was scary for us, because we were like, is this the end? Like, is this going to stop? But to be quite honest, the popularity of vaping is so vast that, it was just a small hiccup.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seemed like it could have been that rallying point that really did the industry in. But you think it was the quality of the product, or just the demand for vapes that kind of helped see it through?
And the response of the industry, the response of the different companies. I can't tell you how many different companies were like, hey, we're going to do extra testing. We're going to test everything because before they were only testing the oil. Now they're like, we're going to test all our hardware. We're testing everything. It just made the industry sharpen their pencils and say, all right, we're going to put out a product. We're going to continue putting out products, but we're going to do all of the due diligence on our end to make sure that what we put out is something that we feel is 100% safe and not, harm anybody.
Is the vape side of the business, is there an opportunity for a craft side of the industry like you see a lot in flower, or is the vape business more of a commodity product?
No, I think there is a huge space for craft, but not to say the commodity gets it to the masses. The craft dials in the people who really want high-end stuff. So I'm grateful for, let's say, the distillate cartridges there, because it really puts it into the hand of people who would never try it. But then after you try it, then you can say, hey, I wonder if there's better. And that was something that I did when I first tried cannabis growing up in the East Coast. We didn't get the best cannabis, but it led me into the journey of, hey, is there something better than this? Like, can I look around and find something better? And the craft, I can't tell you how much the craft has grown this year into, like, let's say rosin or live resin, small batch produced products for the vape space, which is my absolute favorite. It's growing, the demand for it is growing, and it's really just showing how the market is receptive to that.
So vape is your favorite? That's your preferred over, flower edibles? Yeah,
my favorite form of consumption is going to be vaping. I do love flower. I do love joints. I love breaking up flower. It's part one of my favorite things to do, just smelling it, the whole experience and touching it and the residue in your fingers and such. But what I love about that, you can get in a craft vape. Like some of these rosin vapes are better than you can ever smoke a flower, because the flower, as you're smoking it, you might get one or two good hits that really give you the actual taste and feel of the plant, but the rest of it is going to be a smoky mixture of burnt plant matter and stuff like that. But these rosin vapes, my gosh, they are, it tastes like sitting in a field of cannabis. And
talking about live resin, the live resin vape industry. So sales in 2021 were up 87%, I believe. How does that impact the vape filling and capping equipment industry? Is it a struggle to keep up?
It's not a huge struggle to keep up, but it does require a lot on our end to make sure that we are not running out of machines. So we have to, yearly, and we do this often. It's just like, how do we order enough to keep up with the demand? Because you just don't know when something is going to take off and cause a spike in the industry, right? And you don't want to be sitting on a lot of machines, because now you have your money tied up on inventory sitting there. So, we're always going back and forth like, hey, do we feel like we need to ramp up and get more machinery? Or are we good? Or are we going to just ride out for a couple of months and see how things happening? One of the greatest things is we build the machines here in the US in Portland. So we have a little bit more flexibility in what we can do, right? We can have machines partly build and then get the final components as needed. So we just have a little bit more flexibility in our production.
Has Thompson Duke Industrial faced any of the supply chain issues that have been hitting other equipment manufacturers?
Yeah, I think we faced all of them. Specifically with just the metals used in our machines, the Delrin in our trays, every aspect of our industry, the chips, boards, everything in our machines have been kind of just in a precarious situation these past few months. But we've been able to figure out, hey, how do we fit in and how do we just stay alive and make sure we can supply the demand? And we've been doing a good job. I gotta say, we've been doing a good job of that.
What are your lead times look like right now?
So we have machines built. And this is one of the greatest things we did. We kind of went heavy for this year. So we have machines built, ready to ship. So we're not dealing with heavy lead times. We stocked our inventory really well to make sure that we can ride out this year without any issues.
Oh, well, that's incredible foresight. When you're talking to new customers or potential clients, what kind of ROI are they looking at when they bring a new house or a new machine in house?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at getting that return within a month. I mean, you've got guys that are spending, outsourcing their filling. Let's say they're paying anywhere upwards from 65 cents to $1.50 for filling. So you bring in one of our machines, and you get that money back, honestly, within one run of the machine. Or if depending on the volume that you're doing, you're going to get that money back within the month. So it pays for itself relatively quickly.
So what is the biggest obstacle for people bringing these machines or more machines in-house? Is it the capital investment? Is it, lack of manpower to run the machine?
I think it is the capital investment. The cannabis industry is real scrappy. So they're like, hey, let's do the most we can with the least amount of expenditures. And when you have that mentality, sometimes it's hard to show people, hey, you can do a lot more if you spend a little money, right? Mm-hmm. And it's going to make the whole thing easier, right? So a lot of people are like, hey, I've been hand filling and I can hand fill thousands of cards. We don't need a machine. But the reality is it frees them up to grow the business in other areas. Because, if you're just doing it by hand, you're kind of locking yourself into a situation where other parts of your industry of your business isn't growing.
Well, and I have to imagine that moving to a more automated solution helps with things like consistency, efficiency, and then eventually scalability.
Yes, I think those are kind of our biggest points, because a lot of companies out there would like to try to sell you on speed, and we're not in the speed conversation, because we like accuracy. Because if we can accurately fill it the way to the amount that you want every time, we can always make it faster. But accuracy is number one for us. And once people understand that, and understand that you have a lot less waste, right, in your runs, in your batches, then it starts adding up. Once they realize how much they're losing in hand filling or filling with not accurate machines that have cleaning cycles that waste a lot of material, or they're not able to get their material out of the machine, then and you kind of lay it out for them like, hey, you're actually losing a lot more money. The money that you're losing, you could buy one of our machines and you can be making more money off of your whole process.
What are some of the more common pain points where waste happens in the process for hand filling and other processes?
Well, for hand filling, it's just that the motion of drawing a syringe and then filling it into a cart, and then you have a bunch of leaks coming out of the syringe tip as you fill the cart. So now you're wiping that down, right? And then that adds up, right? You're filling thousands of carts, and each time you're wiping the needle tip, that adds up. Or if you're underfilling, overfilling, that's adding up also. So it's just the efficiency in the processes. And then there's some machines that will want you to run your oil through a long line, which is impossible to clear out with your material. So now you're just losing product in the lines just to feed to filling your device. So there's so many aspects that people are losing, just kind of losing their oil. And we worked our machines to not have that happen. I mean, you can fill thousands of carts and probably not lose more than a half a gram in that whole process. And half a gram is a lot.
Mm. I understand that it's a hugely popular category right now, but doesn't a brand still have a great deal of risk if they're not offering, consistent products on a regular basis to the consumer?
Yes, for sure. And that's why it's great to have like standard distillate pens, and a lot of brands are scared to pivot into offering let's say resin or rosin cartridges, because they just know they have this core clientele that likes the price point and the effectiveness of the products that they're already putting out. So we have this conversation a lot. They're like, these brands are like, hey, we're looking to put solventless products out, or we're looking to put live resin products out. The oils are completely different from distillate. One, can your machine handle it? Which our machine can handle it. It's built pretty much to handle any type of oil. Can your machine handle it? And two, they come to us like, hey, what is your feedback? What are you seeing there in the industry? Is this a good move? Is this something that our company should focus on? And we always encourage them that it is, because we see, from our point of view, we can see the growth of the industry and how brands are switching to, even if it's like just a small sector. So let's say maybe distillate, they're producing 10,000 distillate pens on a weekly basis. Add in maybe 500 live resin pens into the queue, and then just see how it does. And some brands do it slowly, and that thing ramps up so quickly, because the demand always, most brands that introduce these newer high-end oils sell out instantly, because the community wants it. The community definitely wants it.
From an operational standpoint, oil can be relatively messy, difficult to clean. What are companies looking at when it comes to cleanability of the machines, maintenance, just to make sure that they're up and running, and safety as well?
Yeah. So just cleanability, it's a huge thing. We have this discussion a lot. our machine has 4 components that touch oil. So it makes it, and it's all of the components are visible. So we have a reservoir that holds the oil. It's a heated reservoir. That reservoir is a continuous pour. So as you're filling carts, you can continuously pour more oil into the reservoir to kind of top it off to continuously fill carts. Cleaning that is a breeze. It's pretty much a huge syringe. So you have a plunger for it. You can also use a tool to scrape out any oil that's in it. It's a glass reservoir, so it's easy to kind of take any residual oil out of that. The machine itself, the whole cleaning process is less than 5 minutes. So you can clean out the machine and have a new set of components on the machine ready to fill in under 5 minutes. And that's something that was important to us because we wanted to make it quick, but we didn't want to make any points where oil is trapped and cannot be removed and had to be soaked out.
Are these components that are swapped out and then cleaned, or are they more like single use?
No, they're swapped out and cleaned. So we have the glass syringe. Like I said, that's something that you can use pretty much endlessly. We have a tubing that connects the reservoir to our valve. And our valve is what the oil travels through to go to our dispense syringe where you select the volume, and then that dispenses out the exact volume that you selected. All of those components are easy to clean. The process that it goes through is pretty much drawing in the oil and pushing it out. So how the cleaning process is. You're drawing in the ethanol or whatever the cleaning solution is, and you're just flushing it out of the components. And then that's pretty much it. It's a couple of pumps out of with the cleaning solution, and then you can see it just be clear. The longest time is probably letting it dry. Let air dry it just to make sure it's fresh and it can be used again.
What is the product line like in terms of cost? What is the sort of entry point? And how large can some of these systems get?
Yeah, so entry point is just under $10,000. So like $8,000, you can get into our semi-automatic machine. Something like that is going to be able to produce a minimum 2,500 fill devices in a day. We've got guys that are using that machine and they're filling up to like 4,000 to 5,000 in a day. And that's just a single operator in front of a machine just going at it. And then if you're going to step up into a fully automated solution, you're looking at in the 35,000 range. And that's going to get you a solution that you can just put your carts into the machine. We design special jigs or trays depending on who's your part manufacturer, supplier. You put it into the machine, you press run, and it runs. You can turn your back, do something else, come back, the tray's done.
What are some of the features some of your clients are asking for now that we might see come along on next generation products?
One of the biggest things that we actually just released is a second heater. So we had the reservoir was heated, and then we have lights that we use as ambient heat to heat up the pathway as the oil is traveling through. We have a 3-inch tube that hooks up the reservoir to our valve. So we were using lights to produce that ambient heat. But what we just came out with, and it's going to be probably a standard in all of our machines moving forward, is a second heater at our valve point. And the valve point is pretty much the last point that the oil touches before being dispensed. So being able to control the amount of heat that valve, the heat that valve is at, is an important thing. And that was something that we came to and were able to listen to our clients as a positive feedback as, hey, this would really help us efficiently run this machine.
Okay. We ran the news that you guys recently sold, I believe it was your 1,000th MCF1 vape cartridge filling machine. When you started with Thompson Duke, did you ever imagine that you would have this many machines out in the market?
I'm going to say yes. And the only reason I'm going to say yes is I've worked for other I worked for another filling machine company before Thompson Duke, and I knew that there really wasn't anybody else in the space catering to what the clients needed.
Mm.
Because there's just not too many options that work. So it's not surprising. I just didn't think we would reach it that fast. What's the most surprising is how fast the industry's grown. That's probably the most surprising part about it. But I knew that this solution would be the solution because of how it was thought about.
What are your expectations for the market going forward? When do you think, if it ever will go federally legal, and how might that impact Thompson Duke?
We operate as if our goal is our machines are GMP ready, right? So we are operating as if it's already federally legal, and we would have to go through all the hoops that you would have to go through to have your machine in a GMP facility. So we have our CETL-US certification. We spent the extra money in making sure that our equipment is going to be future-proofed, which is, we believe legalization will come. Who knows when? But newer states that are coming on to with legalization, like New York, they're talking about, hey, this is going to have to be in a GMP facility. So I think that's the next conversation. Like, legalization, federal legalization is coming, but all of the facilities nationwide are going to have to probably maybe step up their quality and their processes to keep up with what traditional industries standards are. So I think that's what the growth is going to be coming, and that's what we've been working on to be sure to be ahead of that and be a leader in that.
So you moved from New York to California to move into a legal cannabis market. Now that New York's opening up, any chance that you move back?
Not at all. California is an addicting place to be. It's beautiful weather, and just a lot of lovely farms around. It's a magical place, and I do love New York. I was living there for the first 30 years of my life. Amazing state to grow up in, but I'm so happy that I moved to California. But I'm kind of envious of all the people who are in New York, and they're so excited for the market, and I'm excited for them. But because I lived in California, I kind of experienced it already, and I'm like, I don't even want to go through the start of the market. It's fun, and it's a lot of diciness at the same time.
Will the company stay in the vape filling and capping market, or do you see it branching off into other product categories?
I think this is our lane, and that's another reason why we're good at it. We know where we stand in the industry. We're not trying to be everything to everyone. We're trying to be the best at what we do. And I think we're doing a good job. So we're going to be staying in our lane, and we're going to keep supporting our clients and supporting the industry as it grows.
Are most of your sales primarily in California and the Pacific Northwest, or are you seeing sales kind of across the country now?
Mostly across the country. It's funny because, markets like California and Colorado, in the past, we would say like, hey, I think we've sold to everybody that we can in these markets, but companies change directions and change leaderships. And we always find that, hey, there's a company that's been in California that needs some machines. And we're always surprised. We're like, oh, I'm surprised we didn't sell to them already yet. But most of our clients now are coming from newer states, and we don't advertise highly. So a lot of this is word of mouth, which we love, right? So we have, consultants who ran operations in California, now in Oklahoma, and they're like, hey, we're starting something in Oklahoma. We know your machines rock. We need to get this for this facility, and then just copy exactly what you guys did for us in California here. As these newer markets are opening up, most of the people that are opening up those newer markets come from the older markets. And they're bringing us with them. And that's it. We're so grateful for that.
In your opinion, is there anywhere that vape cartridge manufacturers are missing right now?
It's so hard to say because it's still a growing market. So it's you have to feed more, even though it's that sector is growing rapidly. There's still so many more consumers that need to be reached before we can kind of get a picture of what the market really should look like. So I think we're doing a good job in just putting out clean product. That's the number one thing. The vape crisis helped clean up or just define what clean product is. And as long as we stay on this path, we're going to have a lot of data that we can look back at and be like, all right, this is how we can move forward and grow this market in a different way.
Well, Vlad, I really do appreciate you taking the time today. Before we get out of here, is there anything in particular that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about Thompson Duke Industrial or yourself personally?
Yeah, I just want to say, all our machines are made in the USA, and we're super proud of that because we look at this industry growing and we want this industry to help the nation, right? So being able to be a supplier of machinery made in the USA, we're proud to stand behind what we make and the quality of what we make. We source our steel and our parts from the USA. So it's just, we like to keep it in our circle. So I, just want to let people know that, hey, we're probably one of the longest standing vape filling manufacturers, equipment manufacturers in the industry. And even though we're not out advertising all around, if you ask about us, you'll hear great reviews.
If people are looking for more information, is there a way to reach out to you or just go to the website? What do you think?
Yeah, please visit the website. Tons of information. We have spec sheets. We have a lot of good data on our website on the machine. You could reach me direct at vlad@thompsonduke.com, or you can visit our website at thompsonduke.com.
Is there one client in particular that's doing it better than everybody else?
Man, that's a tough one. We have a lot of favorite clients. I would say, I won't mention names, but we do have some clients that are operating like they're in a GMP facility. And we respect that because they don't have to do that. That's something that, they chose to, they're like, this is the standard that we're going to hold ourselves to. And that's what they're doing. And we love to see that because it's an option, right? You don't have to MacGyver everything to put it together. You could hold yourself to a higher place. So whenever we see anything like that, it makes us happy.
On the other side of that, do you ever send a machine to a facility and then go on a site visit and realize, oh, that machine's coming back soon?
You know what? Never coming back soon. We pride ourselves on not having to take back machines because they don't work. But I've been in facilities where it's like, hey, they're making it harder on themselves throughout this process because they're trying to do it in a way that's not going to be advantageous for them. And something like that, we just have to slowly work with them and just share what we know and hope that they take it.
Excellent. Well, Vlad, thanks again, man. I really did appreciate learning more about yourself, your contributions to the industry, and about Thompson Duke Industrial.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
All right, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, for Vlad Valme, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.